Hi, Angela. You're welcome.
Hello.
Yeah, I just wanted to let you know that we've gone live. And just give us 1 minute or so, then we will get started.
Okay, super. I'll put myself on mute.
Yeah, and then if you wanna just put up your slides, you can put them up now so that by the time we just get started, everything is ready.
Okay, is that how you want me to start then with the slides? Or is it going to be a panel with questions?
I think the way we're gonna do it is that we're gonna start. You introduce yourself, then you can talk for 10 minutes, and then we can have a Q&A. Then we have a colleague from Singapore. He will also do the same, and then we'll have a Q&A, if that's fine for you.
Yeah, okay.
All right, great. All right, colleagues, good afternoon. Welcome to the Global Entrepreneurship Week, where this afternoon we are discussing the topic of venture capital. We've invited Angela from Germany. We've also invited Jarin Teo from Singapore. This session is scheduled for 1 hour. And we have, as already introduced, running this session as part of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, which is happening in 180 countries, 40,000 events in 1 week. So at this juncture, I would like to ask colleagues to introduce themselves, and then from there, they jump in straight into their content. You are allowed to type in questions into the Facebook live feed. These questions will come to the screen to either Angela or Jarin. We will start off with Angela leading the presentation, and then we'll conclude with Jarin. Angela, I would like to, at this point, give you the platform to introduce yourself.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for inviting me and thanks for having me here. I'm really curious to see what kind of questions you're going to have. So, to quickly introduce myself, I was born in Germany 39 years ago. I have Italian parents who migrated to Germany, and I have a strong history with India, where I've been first in the year 1998. And for the past 22 years, I've been traveling back and forth between the country. Um, I studied economics. I become a chartered accountant, and my dream was always to work in India for a while. But before I was able to do that, I started my career at the big accounting firm called KPMG in the M&A division and worked there for many years, I think around 7. And then I started working in India in 2013. And what I do there is I'm in the space of wealth management. I work for an entrepreneurial family called the Bissels. And the Bissels own a retail chain in India called Fab India. It's a chain that produces and collects apparel, clothes, and furnitures, but also organic food from 55,000 artisans all over India and sells it in 350 stores. Now, my role is not with the company, it's with the family. So I'm responsible to invest all their personal money in the stock markets in the US and in India as well. We invest in real estate, but we also invest in startup companies, and that's how the connection happened. So today I was asked to tell a little bit about my experience in India with investing in startups, but also give an introduction to the world of family offices and what role they can play with regard to investing in the startup ecosystem, which I understand is quite nascent in Botswana.
Thank you for that interesting introduction, Angela. I'm very excited about the new words that you've just shared. Words like family office are like new words in my world. And we are very excited about the content that you share with us. Maybe at this juncture, I can ask Jerry, my colleague from Singapore, to just introduce himself.
All right, thank you for inviting me. I'm Jiren. I run a venture builder and also run GW here in Singapore as well as Entrepreneurship World Cup. Really glad to be back, with Gen Botswana on another panel to share with the fellow entrepreneurs and business owners from Botswana. Looking forward to share more about what the venture builder does and what opportunities there are in Singapore, in Asia at large, and looking forward to it. Thank you.
All right, we are now jumping straight into it. But I just want to let colleagues know that this is being live streamed on Facebook. So if they wish, they can tag themselves on Global Entrepreneurship Week Botswana. It's also been tagged on YouTube. I've also been informed it's been tagged on our other platforms in Botswana, which generally entrepreneurs sit in those. And Angela, before you give your presentation, I must warn you that Her Excellency Majid did do a sterling, presentation. It's not common to get an ambassador to sit in online in these entrepreneurship things. So we are learning a lot of things as we are doing this, and we are very much excited about the recommendation we've been told about you. And at this juncture, I would like you to perhaps initiate your talk with what you think is possible in Botswana and what we can learn from you.
Yeah, so I'm unfortunately not able to share my screen. So if you could upload the presentation, that would be great. But in the meantime, I think I'll just say a few words. So I think in our initial conversation, I learned that Botswana is very different from everything I have seen so far. Means that I have never been to any African country. I've been to a lot of Asian countries, so bear with me when you listen to me that my experience is limited to Europe, US, and Asia. But nevertheless, I'm very curious to learn more about Botswana and to get all your questions. As I said, I'm coming from the family office world. This is a world where you can imagine there are single family offices and there are multi-family offices, and it's an industry that has been built around high net worth individuals. They're usually classified as a family that owns more than 15 million US dollars. And then you can consider yourself a really high net worth individual. When you have that amount of money, then you can think about having your own team that does nothing else the whole day to make sure that your money is protected, is preserved. And if it is in Asia, other than in Europe, then the goal is also to increase your wealth. And the reason why I'm highlighting this is because many Asian families are first-time entrepreneurs and getting into this wealthy ecosystem for the first time. So their appetite to increase their wealth is much higher compared to European families who've been doing this for many generations. So if you and so I'm working for an Indian family that follows this criteria. So we have a small team and we decide along with the family members, which is a brother, a sister, 2 kids, a wife and a mother of 88 years old, how to invest and where to invest. And this depends on the appetite of the family in terms of risk and flexibility and liquidity. So there are various options, of course. As you know, you can invest in real estate and property, you can invest in private equity, you can invest in gold, you can just hoard cash on an account if you get some interest somewhere on this planet. You can invest in venture capital as well, and that's where I want to focus today. So if you want to invest in startup companies, then there are different ways to do it. So there are usually different stages, and it depends on which stage and what type of risk you want to get in. So assuming your family does not want to take a high risk and invest in startup companies and young tech entrepreneurs, then you can decide to do it maybe on your own and do it as an angel investor. An angel investor is usually someone who invests a few $1,000s up to $100,000 in a young company where they believe that with their expertise and their network, they will be able to mentor and handhold a founder and also help them with the first stages, means from the idea to maybe getting a product prototype. So if you enjoy being entrepreneurial and participating at new ideas with new entrepreneurs, then this is exactly the right phase to come in. It's the riskiest one, but also the most exciting one. And the expectations usually are that you provide the founder with mentoring, with guidance, with hand-holding, and also with your network. If that is too early for you because either you think the check size is too small or you don't want to take such a high risk, then of course there are other phases where you can come in. The next phase is usually called the seed funding phase, where you can invest 50,000 up to $500,000. And that's a phase where the team usually is beyond the idea. So they have a prototype, they have already something that you can see, feel, or experience because it's a service. And that's a phase where you usually help the team by getting new investors on board who will help them with the growth stage. So for example, if you can see that there is a team with an idea and whatever they're doing in terms of marketing and sales works and they're getting more traction and you want to support the team, then you can provide them with growth money. This is usually when venture capital comes in. So I'll stop you for a second. So venture capital is usually, there are different ways for families to invest. Either you invest in a venture capital fund, means you allow a team to select 10 to 15 companies, Or you can co-invest along with a fund. That sometimes works. Not many funds like it, because then it means you avoid to pay them a management fee and share the carry with them. But some venture capital funds are also open to co-investments. Or you can create your own venture capital fund if you have enough wealth to do so. This phase is usually a phase where the team has already generated first revenue, first customers, and is ready to scale. And ready to scale means you have seen that a certain marketing initiative works and you just want to replicate it so that the team gets more customers and along with it more revenue. Beyond that, there are phases where then the exit comes in. So all investors want to get an exit at some point, because that means when there is actually a profit to be made, and this means you're either selling it to a larger private equity company, or the company is large enough to do an IPO. I can see
So
that
maybe just
I can take things now.
Yeah, maybe just to ask, I mean, as you know, Botswana is not a typical, I mean, African country. It's a country that's got it's got a wealthy government and wealthy people. In your perspective, if one has to maybe locate these family offices in order to help maybe bring them into the startup world, what would be the 1, 2, 3 steps to do?
Just to understand your question correctly, are you asking how they can find startups to invest in?
How they can find startups to invest in? No, I'm asking if, like I'm saying, in an environment where you sit, how do you locate a family office? I mean, one that wants to have interest in investing in startups. That's the question I have. Or if there isn't family offices, I mean, it's not a culture that I'm used to. That's why I'm saying it's an interesting word for me. How does one inspire such a new way to invest in startups? Because what we hear is angel investing and stuff like that, but family offices is not like a common word.
Yeah. The family office world, at least in Asia, is nascent as well. It comes from the US and Europe, where families have been wealthy for many generations. What I would suggest families to do is, if they are interested in investing in startups and supporting entrepreneurs, is to get in touch with people like you. And to hear from people like you, what are the teams that are known, what are they working on, and maybe in collaboration with you, initiate things, have a small event or gathering where other families can come together and startups can be met and they can mingle and understand it a little bit better.
All right. I think for now we can, I don't know, you can proceed, and then we will then try to get the questions from the live feed.
Yeah, sure. So as I said, I'm hearing an echo. Is it better now? I think so. So I think coming back to your question, if one really wants to invest in startups, one does not necessarily have to have a family office. It's a personal decision one should take. But what I recommend is the first 3 phases that I highlighted: angel investing, seed financing, and also venture. They are risky, and the earlier, the riskier. So I would always only do it if that is money that one is willing to to lose as well. So it shouldn't be money that you're planning to use at some point in time, because the startup ecosystem takes time. A young team from idea to scaling can take up to 8 and even more years to get to a stage where the company can be exited again. So the earlier you come in, the longer is the waiting period. It can be a very exciting journey and a very rewarding one financially if everything goes well. I think that if you want, you can share the presentation with interested parties later. It's just a few thoughts that I had summarized before getting on this call. Why it is important for families to also support the local ecosystem. For example, in Botswana, if there is no such ecosystem, is sometimes you can increase entrepreneurship in a country, and you can therewith generate more jobs. You can get new technologies to involve that actually help your country to solve challenges that you could otherwise not solve. So supporting young entrepreneurs who have ideas, who are visionaries, can be a very rewarding experience financially, but also from a social standpoint. And participating as I could imagine participating as a family in Botswana in building this ecosystem to be something very exciting, because you allow young entrepreneurs and young people to find solutions to help. And the more you do it and the more the word gets spread and the larger some of your companies grow, the more you will also attract foreign money. Because there is one very easy lesson: capital follows capital. So if other outside investors see that something is happening in your country and there is money to be made, they will follow. What else can I say about the startup ecosystem? What we have learned is that it's usually something where it really depends on networks. It's a very people-driven business, means that you have to have an understanding of who are the founders who will be able to not just dream about an idea, but actually make it a reality. So who are the founders who can make thoughts become a thing? Who are other investors who will fund the startup beyond the stage that you can invest in? Who are the experts who can introduce the startup, who can mentor it? And where are the corporates that can become clients, for example? So if you start investing in the startup ecosystem, you need to have a huge network. What else can I say? It is also helpful to maybe start in the beginning with others. Like if you're saying there are a few wealthy families in Botswana, then maybe it makes sense to have a gathering where they can meet and see what kind of interests do they have and what kind of exciting opportunities do they see for their country. And then they can become an investing club, for example. They can decide to do investments together as an angel network or beyond. And then they can hire someone who actually scouts the teams and who actually reaches out and says, okay, they're interested in a particular sector in the agriculture world. So now 4 or 5 families together have someone who is going to scout the teams for them. So co-investing is always a way to minimize risk and leverage your own opportunity. Of course, if there would be a thriving ecosystem already, then I would say another possibility to just begin to invest and reduce the risk is to invest in more mature companies that are not at early stage, who have already attraction, some revenue, and where the risk is a little bit lower because they have gone through all the up and downs of their early years. And if there were venture capital funds in Botswana, another way to minimize risk and start exploring this new investment asset is to invest in funds or accelerators or incubators for that matter. So I think with that, I'll stop for a bit and wait if there are already some questions, because I think it's been a lot of details.
So there is a question that I was given so that I can ask in this session, that the type of financing instrument that families, offices, or funds or VC funds typically do is for fast, high growth businesses. But if you look in Africa, in Africa, we build more. We're building more of SMEs. These are businesses that grow very slowly. They are export based. They're not like Silicon Valley or Bangalore or Singapore type of companies. These are companies that are meant to grow in 10 years. So I wonder how a family office would justify itself to invest in a continent where there is no exponential growth in the business, meaning that also it means you have to review your expectation of exponential profits. Because I expect that when you invest as a family office, you're not saying you'll be patient for 10 years before you can get your return on investment. The other issue is on the what you call a thriving startup ecosystem. What are the qualities of something like that? Because in Africa, you look at Nigeria, you look at South Africa. These are two of what we call our biggest startup ecosystems. But what's the disadvantage is that if you look at South Africa, it's a high income country. It's not a typical normal African country. The population is quite huge. Same with Nigeria. And these are two big economies in Africa. Is the message that startup economy will succeed where the economy is very huge and also where the population is high because of the ability to scale? So countries like Botswana that have maybe 1 million people, or Namibia, which has 2 million people, or Rwanda, which has 14 million people, but are very small, are these countries that will not benefit of VC or family offices type of capital? Maybe you could intervene on those two. Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I will start with how patient family offices are. So one thing that family offices do have in common is because it is the wealth of a family, and families usually think very long term. And normally they also think beyond their own life. So a lot of the tasks that a family office would have are also about the succession planning. Means if you pass away, what are your children, the next generation, going to inherit? So a family office will always be a little bit less reluctant to take risk, but they will be more patient than a typical venture capital fund. A typical venture capital fund has a life cycle of 8 years, and it can go up to 12 years. So as a startup, you are under a lot of pressure within this period to deliver an exit. Family offices are much more patient. If they see that the company is going and growing in the right direction, then they are much more willing to stay on board and support the team for a longer period. That's a huge difference between family offices and the pure venture capitalists. So that's just to clarify that on the patient cycle. Then on the ways to invest in entrepreneurs and to support them with funding, the good thing about the financial markets is that there are always creative or less creative ways to bring capital to places where it can grow. So if, for example, you are of the opinion that the companies are not fast growing, but they are cash generating, for example, because they only build a company when they can generate cash and profits, then it might make sense to provide them with loans and just provide them with debt. Because if you are cash generating, it means you can repay your interest, and at some point you can repay your principal as well. So this could be another option. And there is also venture debt out there. So I'm just saying one option is equity. It's usually the preferred one for fast growing companies because you don't have cash and you are not generating cash for a long time. So that's why you are willing to give away equity. But if you are cash generating, that is another way how families can support entrepreneurship locally. Then I think you asked about the criteria for a thriving ecosystem, startup ecosystem. And I think you also asked about the population and whether this matters. So I'll probably start with the number of the population. So a market is always essential for an investor because it means it is essential for the entrepreneur. An entrepreneur wants to have the possibility to have a really large market at some point. Whether the market has to be in your own country, that's a different story. So an example from Europe is that we have countries like Israel, where I think the population is at around 8 million. I might be wrong on the number. So, but the entrepreneurs there, they start building for not for their home market, but for other markets. So they will always keep in mind whether what they're building also serves the needs of their neighboring countries. I don't know whether this information helps, but if you are a company or you're planning to start a company in Botswana, then I think if you believe that your own market is too small long term, then you can always think of, would this solution, would this product also help the population in the neighboring countries that you mentioned, like South Africa and so forth. And so you open up to a larger market. And if it is something in the technology space, usually there are no boundaries unless it's education or a very specific solution in the agricultural space. But usually you find clients. So maybe to give you an example from India, there is a company in Bangalore that is providing a school management software company for schools that are in rural places in India and are not digital yet. And their second largest market after India is Nigeria. And then come some countries in the Middle East and Latin America. And this is because other countries and other schools are facing the same infrastructural problems. So I'm saying, as an entrepreneur in Botswana, if you believe your own market is too small, always think about, will this help my neighbors in another neighboring state? And then take it from there. So I would say population is not the only or most relevant criteria for a thriving ecosystem. What I do believe is important for a thriving ecosystem is to have maybe a good university that attracts talents, that attracts young, very well-educated engineers, or in your case, people who understand farming from a more academic standpoint, and I don't know what all, so a strong university helps people like you who are building ecosystems and networks, who have an incubator or accelerator, who educate about entrepreneurship per se. The more people there are who are doing the same thing as you are doing, the better. And then I think getting the first investors locally, because they are the ones who understand your country, your needs, your people the best. If they trust in you, then others will follow. This is a long-term process. And so I think good ideas with very well educated people, strong networks in different fields, plus capital, and then you can get a thriving startup ecosystem.
Thank you for that, Angela. I would like at this point to bring in Jarin Teo from Singapore to intervene. Then we will circle back with the questions and the last points.
Great. I think very insightful feedback from Angela.
Great.
I think very
insightful feedback from Angela.
I think there's another, okay, it's done. Great. Yep. So yeah, I think there's also many family offices coming to Singapore, like Dyson, for example, the family office now is Singapore. Of course, I think I'll probably share my slides to start my presentation. So I briefly prepared a presentation just to share a little bit on startups, tech startup perspective. Myself, I run CodeSurance. We are impact-driven venture builder. So slightly different, and actually a lot different from a family office. We don't invest in cash, to say. We invest in what the entrepreneurs require to take their business to the next level for them to scale up and go to market. Yeah. So we do technical consultations, helping the entrepreneurs to crystallize the problems, identify the opportunities. Sometimes they have great ideas. They have dreams. We'll bring them back to reality to try to get them focused on putting customers first, for them to get the business, running, for them to go to market. Yeah. We do venture building. That's our core business. Joint ventures, partnerships. In terms of technology, we build the technologies required for the startups to, embark on the entrepreneur journey. To founders to focus on business, and the rest of the technical aspects will be handled by our team. We also do technology development in AI, blockchain, etc. Right. So one of the popular companies we had was PackThat, this travel tech startup that thankfully they were acquired before the COVID-19 pandemic. If not, I believe the startup may be in quite serious financial situations. They were acquired by an Indonesian company, and it was subsequently then listed on Indonesian Stock Exchange. We're invested by DBS Bank, Quest Ventures, and Startup SG. A little bit more the Singapore startup ecosystem. This is an ecosystem map. So we created this about 3 years ago in 2017 to have an overview for the government about where are the different players in the ecosystem, right? We have the VCs, investors, accelerators, the governments, institutions. Like what Angela mentioned, we need very strong institutions. The universities themselves, so we have great universities like National University of Singapore, Nanyang Technological University. They're churning out many great innovative technologies. And then, on the corporate side, we have the SMEs and startups coming in to commercialize these technologies, licensing the technologies and bring them to market. And we have very strong corporates, Wilma, etc. Helping these companies. It may be, in terms of investing through their own corporate fund, venture capital fund, or maybe even they are being their first customer if it's the B2B customers, right? We have also incubators, accelerators, and co-working spaces. This pretty much summarizes three aspects. I'll say 6 industries. Yeah, the health tech, clean tech, fintech, ICT, advanced manufacturing, and biotech. And earlier on, we're talking about angel and seed round in Singapore, and on average, is about 600,000 Singapore dollars in terms of seed round. And then we have Series A and Series B and above, and so on. Yeah. So back then, I think we have about 68 companies that were acquired. So 68, at the most the corners of the map, those are the M&As, acquired companies that were successfully acquired. As of 68, and I think now there's a lot more. The startup ecosystem now, we are close to 4,000 to 5,000 startups. Back then, we were thinking about over 1,000 startups, right? And if you are an investor, incubator, accelerator, there's a lot of schemes the government have in place for you. You may want to check out the Startup SG Investors program, right? Is to look for investors around the world who is interested in invest in Singapore's startup ecosystem, right? Some of the things that it provide is really incentives, matching grants, funds, tax incentives, tax exemptions even. So if you are fund management, we have this S13H scheme, which gives you tax exemption for qualifying income streams. However, there's some requirements. Your minimum fund size will be 10 million, and have to be one of these few legal structures, are limited partnerships, a company registered in Singapore or elsewhere, or a variable capital company. VCC, that is a very interesting legal structure, was just established earlier this year. So if you want to find out more, please go to startupsg.gov.sg. Also, of course, we have accelerators. So we have this Startup SG Accelerator that helps startups basically capitalize the growth opportunities of high potential startups through their own programs. The accelerators should have programs to nurture startups, bring them to assess markets, obtain business financing, helps in terms of product developments or service developments, mentoring of startups, so on and so forth. Yeah. Other aspects that is supported, I would say financing is very important. Thankfully, companies in Singapore or companies based in Singapore don't have much issues in terms of financing. Financing is easily accessible and available. We have the enhanced SME working capital fund, whereas a company or startups who are not fundraising could actually get up to $1 million in terms of working capital funds. And this amount has been increased because previously it was $300,000. And now because of COVID-19, many companies require more cash flow. So the government increased it to $1 million. The guarantor is the government. So it's actually a really good scheme to help SMEs to achieve operational cash flow to operate their business and scale abroad, right? We have fixed assets, investments, venture debt. Venture debt is increasingly getting more and more popular. You may check out some of the grants available. We have enhanced trade loans for your trade needs. You can borrow up to 10 mil. We have project financing. We also have mergers acquisition support. This is a Startup SG Tech. So Startup SG Tech is one of the various schemes that's supporting proprietary technology solutions that has a scalable business model, right? So that's a proof of concept grant that's available if your solution is a conceptualization stage. Technical feasibility, viability has yet to be proven. You have up to 250,000 Singapore dollars in funding. After your proof of concept is completed, you can then apply for the proof of value, where you are now carrying out further development of the prototype and to validate by bringing this to market, right? That's established concept, right? You can receive up to 500,000 Singapore dollars. Next tier of funding or grant support, I would say from the Startup SG Equity. Many of the investors globally are coming to Singapore to set up the venture fund, really because there's a lot of co-funding aspects that's provided by the Singapore government. Yeah. So in Startup SG Equity scheme, the government co-invests, with third-party investors to eligible startups. This helps stimulate the private sector investments into the innovative technology startups in Singapore with intellectual property and those with global market potential. We have general tech companies, general tech such as ICT, info communication technologies, IoT, Internet of Things. The investment cap of $2 million, you can get 1:1 funding from the government. Yeah. Deep tech companies, that includes advanced manufacturing, pharmaceutical, med tech, agriculture, or food tech, can get up to $8 million. Right, so these are the various schemes. This is an overview of the different schemes. We also have Startup SG Founder, which provides a first-time founder, a first-time entrepreneur, 50,000 Singapore dollars in funding to help them kickstart their ideas to get started on their entrepreneur journey. We have Startup SG Equity, as I mentioned earlier on. We have the COVID support schemes. We have that Startup SG Network, which helps them to access 180 plus accelerators and 300 investors. right? Startup Architect, we have national innovation challenges that can tackle challenges because sometimes they're entrepreneur, but they don't have a problem or a painful problem that's intensive enough that that has this commercial opportunity. Yeah. So we have challenges as on the platform where entrepreneurs can attempt and they may become successful startups. Right. So if you'd like interested to join as a mentor or community, please feel free to scan the QR code. I think last thing I'd like to share about is the business exchange program to Singapore. Have been hosting it for the past, I'll say 2 to 3 years. Of course, we can't do it this and because due to COVID-19. But we're happy to host, any entrepreneurs coming from Botswana or from around the world to Singapore. We help in terms of the National University of Singapore's Entrepreneurship Summer Program, where entrepreneurs are entrepreneurial individuals from across Southeast Asia and Asia came over to Singapore National University to experience the summer program. Also helped conduct Industry 4.0 workshop in Saudi Arabia during the Miss Global Forum last year. This year was also conducting a session, but had it online instead. Yeah. We have a Credit Suisse startup bootcamp that helps support high school entrepreneurs. We also help big Denon Asia Pacific with digital transformation and design thinking workshops. Right. We have BNP Paribas. We have a startup ecosystem tour. They are C-level, C-suite executives from around the world for BNP coming to Singapore to understand how the startup ecosystem works and learn more about fintech startups. We also hosted Kazakhstan founders from Kazakhstan to do the go-to-market program in Singapore. Yeah, so really great, I'll say, experiences and helping these startups access the market opportunity, not just in Singapore. We do have a pretty small market, but the region is where I'll say the market opportunity is because we have a 640 million population in the region in Southeast Asia of 10 countries. It's said to be the 4th largest economy in the years to come. Yeah. So on the clients we have, partners, supporters. And yes, if you're interested, please do scan this QR code and let me know and see how we can help at Gen Singapore. Right. And if any contacts, feel free to reach out to me at jren@gensg.org. And off with my personal code, give value and you'll be valued. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Teo, for that interesting presentation. I just want to quickly jump in on one issue that maybe Angela spoke about. I see it appears in your presentation, the need for quality universities. The reason why I'm saying this is because we're talking about startups and we're talking about financing. But you see where we sit, we have no idea where startups come from. Others say they come from universities that provide quality education that inspires people to be more entrepreneurial. Others have said that if you look at Silicon Valley, it's what it is because of MIT and Stanford. But in the Botswana context, we've got the World Bank Group saying, and the private sector also saying, the quality of graduates or talent that comes out of the universities is not innovating enough for the market. Therefore, meaning there's an industry mismatch. So if I was to borrow insights from the both of you, what resembles a quality university that can ultimately output a talent that could be investment ready for you guys? Maybe Teo, we could start with you.
I would say for our stage, we look at pre-seed and seed stage startups and founders. We typically prefer founders that comes, 2 to 3. We don't really recommend solo founders. We do see successful solo founders in previous cases, but typically the entrepreneurial journey for someone who's not so experienced in doing business is better to have at least one other founder with you, co-founder, to support you, because it's going to be very mentally straining, emotionally as well, because the entrepreneur journey isn't easy. And if it's easy, everyone would have already been an entrepreneur and be a successful one, right? So I think where the university comes in is to provide the network to find like-minded individuals who may be your classmate, your schoolmate, or someone you took the same module with. And I think this is where the university provide that support of the connection. And if the universities, for example, the ones in Singapore, they have a very strong entrepreneurial ecosystem where you have successful entrepreneurs coming back to serve, to give back, to mentor the startups founders. We also have incubation spaces that will help the entrepreneurs save costs in terms of rental, utilities, etc. They have frequent events that provides them insights to industry problems, industry tours, frequent project collaboration with industry partners, MNCs, that will help them to gain insights because they may not have any working experience or understanding of the industry inside out, right? So I think these are key things that the university could play a part in. And it also really depends on the individuals because, like I mentioned, we will really look at individuals, the founders, because anyone has an idea, but the ones who is disciplined, the one who has the grit to persevere on the journey to get their business started and scale, not just locally but regionally to access a bigger market and to then capitalize on it to hire more people that will help the economy. And I think these are things that we hope and we look at and the quality of founders. Yeah.
Yeah, so I agree with everything that was just said. So I would probably add that I think a good university should, apart from the academic curriculum, be a place where the minds of the young students get stimulated, where they are allowed to think outside the box. So they of course learn their major very well, but where they are, as Theo said, allowed to meet others who are like-minded and who maybe have complementary skills. Could be in terms of knowledge. So if you're an engineer, that you collaborate with others. So having spaces where students from different topics can collaborate and their imagination is stimulated is, I think, something good. And where I also believe that a university can play a very valid role, even if there are not many resources, is they can invite experts. They can invite experts. They can invite guest lecturers. They can invite, if you are saying that entrepreneurship is something that should be taught more often and should be and the students there should hear about it more often, then they can start inviting people from other places to teach your students about entrepreneurship or about whatever topic is interesting for them, or even having people from other walks of life, like the ambassador who you mentioned, like Margaret, so that they just get exposed to people who are in the entrepreneurial ecosystem, either as entrepreneurs or as investors or as supporters like Margaret and you. So just the university should be a place of a melting pot where different mindsets come together, and they can actively be that role by hosting and be providing the platform for it.
Yeah, thank you for those points. I mean, it's quite interesting the way you put it, that probably the issue isn't curriculum in universities in order to inspire more young people in Botswana to be more entrepreneurial and to develop probably to solve the right problems, because that's an issue for us. I mean, we don't have the issue for me why I raise this is because I get worried because I'm talking to people that will have money, and then when they come here, they ask me, "Where's the deal flow? We don't see the deals. Where are the startups?" Then they look around and then they say, "Who's inspiring who where?" And then we see that the source of the problem is that nobody's really showing people the way to be entrepreneurial. So I will note that point down as a recommendation to say what really needs to be done in the universities is not to rework the curriculum, although it's needed, but perhaps to inspire, like you say, imagination, to promote more mentorship, to promote more ecosystem cohesion with those that are in the entrepreneurial world. But before we come to the conclusion, I wonder though, to both of you, that with the growth that you read about Africa, Africa has 55 independent states, which are all different. And if you look at Botswana, Botswana is unique in its own. It's not where we sit in the SADC region. I mean, we are like a small economy that's got diamond. Everything here is well organized. Everything works. But for those that want to build for scale, how do you bring the other countries along? Do you open up the talent in Zimbabwe to come in and work with the talent from Namibia in Botswana? So basically, do we establish, I think what I talked to you, Angela, about, do we position the country to be an entrepreneurial hub, or how do we position it? Maybe you could give us advice just based on your own geographic look of the entrepreneurial potential of a country like Botswana from a capital-based perspective.
Well, that's a difficult one. The reason is that it means that I have to judge a situation or a country that I don't know. But I think what I would do is, or maybe I'll have to step back for a second. So what I hear from all that you were saying is that entrepreneurship is very nascent, and one thing that I truly believe in, we human beings, we are wired in a way we can't think what we don't know. So everything that you can do that starts with that means educating them in a way that they can see that entrepreneurship is an alternative and is an option, will probably be the starting point from where you go. To say that it's going to be the next entrepreneurial hub might be too difficult, but to say that it might be the next innovative hub might be something that is a step before that, and that you can build with the family. So maybe the task is not to say in 5 years we have the next 10 unicorns coming from Botswana, a unicorn being a company valued at $1 billion, which is like the dream of every investor to have. But maybe to say that in 5 years in Africa or wherever, in your neighboring countries, like the next neighboring countries, you want to be known as a place where there are people and where there is a ecosystem that is thriving and is attracting interesting talents, and that could be maybe a starting point. And to give you an example, so because we spoke about the university again, and you mentioned it several times, that farming and cattle plays a very important role in your country apart from the diamonds. So maybe to just have maybe you can start with selected events and gatherings around certain topics. For example, you say at the university that you have in Botswana, along with people like Margaret and yourself, you have an event around farming, and you invite experts from other universities and a couple of entrepreneurs as well, plus families who could actually have the funds to invest in ideas that arise from there, or to have a workshop, or if workshop is too less, then maybe have a competition, like idea competition, where people can actually and have to come up with ideas, and start with that process, educating them about entrepreneurship first, and then getting them to a stage where they actually are creative and they can actually have ideas in workshops or trainings or around that. And then the third thing is to say that's going to be the next innovation hub, and And if you think about Africa and new innovation hubs, then Botswana has to come up in our minds in the next 5 years, for example.
Thank you for that point. I mean, it resonates with the thought process, because we would love as much as possible to see what we can do with the cattle. For example, I don't know if you knew this. I mean, we have over 3 million cattle, but we only have 1.5 or 2.5 million people. So if you walk around the country, you'll see more animals than human beings. So so that should be interesting to see, that we should match that together with the innovation. So, but it is a practical recommendation to think about it, to say, besides the diamonds that go to Belgium and Singapore and India, perhaps it's time to think about, with the size of the country being what it is, how about practically building, and attracting talent around that in order to innovate. Perhaps Theo, so that you can maybe comment on this question, then we could come to a close.
I would say I've not been to Botswana yet, but definitely love to go there. We don't have much cattle running around in Singapore. We don't have much space for that. So yeah, I mean, we do have, long time back, maybe before the modernized Singapore. But nowadays we are more towards, we do believe the food is a very important sector. So for example, because of the pandemic now, and Singapore don't produce a lot of food on its own, the government is making a point whereby by 2030, we have to produce 30% of the food within Singapore. So that helps boost a lot of the food industry. And in recent times, we also see a rise in food tech companies, right? Food technology companies. And I was sharing earlier on 33 Labs, which is the world's first cell-based milk tech company. So they create clean milk from this cell-based technologies. And they also won the Entrepreneurship World Cup global finals this year. So these are some of the companies that are coming out from Singapore and revolving around the food. And we understand that food scarcity is a huge issue. And I think there's a lot we have to learn from Botswana and the rest of the countries around our region that's invested in agriculture, food innovation, etc. Yeah. And so I can't comment much in terms of how Botswana would transform, but I will always believe it's better to focus on your strength, and that will make you 10 times better than focus on your weakness, which may only make you 1 time better. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, colleagues. And Theo, just to let you know, I mean, today you learn a bit of history, and also we're talking finance. We've got over, like I said, over 2 million cattle, but you'll be shocked that we import 90% of our milk comes from outside Botswana.
Wow.
So a company like that startup, if it was to come in a market like this, where we don't have any milk, they would certainly succeed. But looking at the region, as Angela mentioned. So I just want to conclude by saying, I think for this session, with my vision of creating a fund that would be sitting behind all these innovations, it could be agriculture as you recommend. My interest was to spark an interest for you to know a little bit about this small country called Botswana, but also to just see how you could best leverage your resources to one day fly here and help us bring these ideas and visions that we have to life. And I certainly think after this discussion, you will find it keen to go and Google about our 450,000 elephants that roam the 3 or 4 countries that are in and around Botswana without a border. That's one interest. Then the other interest will be that Botswana is unique in importing 90% of everything. I mean, we get 80% fruits from South Africa. We get 80% of cereal from South Africa. So it's a very scary situation. So we are trying to do this because we care. We think that the economy should somehow use or leverage talent to come up with local solutions. And I think with your help and with these thoughts that I've shared, you'll go back and reflect and come back about the possible call to action that can be done in Botswana. So consider visiting Botswana in order to help build the startup ecosystem. So you may say your last words in 30 seconds, and then the session will be officially closed, and the sessions will be loaded on our Global Entrepreneurship Week Botswana Facebook page, where you can share the insights with others. So over to you, colleagues, to say your last words, and then we end it.
I think I just ended with the fact that you have accomplished your task 100%. I'm really curious to learn more about Botswana and to come and visit it the moment we're allowed to fly again, and to be part of your entrepreneurial and innovative stories. So all the best.
Yes, likewise, definitely. After the COVID-19 pandemic, has been, the condition has been improved, we'll definitely want to head over to Botswana, not just for the cattle and the startup ecosystem, but also to look at opportunities. As Botswana being an innovation hub in Africa. Thank you.
All right, colleagues. Bye bye, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.